Hello students, welcome back to Edubbey Global Solution. Today we'll be discussing the macroeconomic aims of government. Now what do we mean by government and what are the macroeconomic aims of government? Now our first slide here shows the roles of government, but in the first place, what do we mean by government? A government is a system or group of people governing an organized community. Of course, we have discussed what macroeconomics is in our previous classes, but let us review it. It's a branch of economic dealing with the performance studies and decision making of a what of an economic as a whole. Now, what are the role of government? The government carries out a range of functions in an economic short as what owners of industry and assets, which are schools, hospitals, etc. A government also serves the role as a producer, employers, a regulator, collector of taxes, and director of the level of economics activities. Now let us move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we now have the role of government at local and national levels. Now here we have to drag the word into the correct boxes. The government as a producer. Now as a producer, it provides at all levels of government. We have public schools, welfare services, and public service. Now I want you guys to guess what are public schools. We have done that. And what are welfare services here, and what are public services at the same time. Now let us check. Here we have our public good. We have street light, of course we all know that before. Street light, and also we have motor park to be what to be our public goods. And we have our welfare services here. Of course we have unemployment benefits as part of our welfare services, and we also have pensions to be our welfare services. And here we have public services. We have police stations, and we have waste management. Here let us check. Of course we are good to go. And government also serve as an employer here. As an employer, a government provide employment to large population by contracting projects short as building roads to a what to a private firm. Now we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we have the role of government at an international levels. Now government manage its trade in goods and services with other countries by negotiating what international trade deals, that is dealing with two or more countries in trade. They also manage macroeconomic in terms of what price, employment growth, and income redistribution. And they also help for vulnerable groups of people in society through welfare scheme. We move to the next slide. Move to the next slide. We have one past question here or two. Which action is not performed by government as part of its international role? Just did that right now. Providing humanitarian aid to refugees, imposing tariff on imports, issuing visas to foreign tourists, building offshore wind farm. Of course, it is building offshore wind farm is not performed by government in international role level. Now the second past question says, what is most likely to be the responsibility of a central government? We have the provision of immigrant official at the airport, the provision of security camera in a shopping center. No. The provision of ticket inspector on a train is not performed by government. The provision of security staff at a bank. No. Is the provision of immigrant officers at an airport. Now we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we have the government macroeconomic aim. What are the government macroeconomic aims? We have first to be stable and sustainable economic growth. By economic growth, we mean what? An increase in the gross domestic product, that is the amount of goods and services produced in an economy over a period of time. Of course, government aim of a stable and sustainable economic growth, and also a low level of inflation, that is the continuous rise in the price level in an economy. Also, government aims at reducing the rate of what? The rate of unemployment, and also equitable distribution of income in a country. Of course, government reduce the inequality of income among the citizens by imposing tax more on rich than the what? Than the poor, and also the equilibrium in the balance of payment of a nation, that is between their exports and import. The exports must be what? Must be greater than the country's import, which leads to the surplus in what? Their balance of payment. Now we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we have two past questions here. What is not usually a what? A macroeconomic aim. Now we have lowering cyclical unemployment, reducing absolute poverty, balance of payment stability, and high government borrowing. Of course, government did not aim to be borrowing in a large amount. Now we have what are the two aims that the government normally pursues when managing the performance of the whole economy, that is the macro economy. Now, to give everyone equal income and to increase government revenue. Of course, they did that, but this one is just only one day. They give equal income, but did they increase? To ensure no one is unemployed and to reduce exports, no. To protect the environment and reduce interest rates, to encourage an increase in production and to prevent inflation. This serve as the correct answer. Now we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we now have the conflict of macroeconomic aims. What are the conflicts between the aim of government? We have the full of employment and price stability. Of course, we have the full employment to be the where the entire labor force are being what? Employed. Now we have low rate of unemployment, will totally boost the income of business, that is their wages, and workers will lead to higher demand and also make the firm to increase their price. That one is common. Now we have economic growth and full employment versus what? Balance of payment stability. I've discussed what balance of payment means now. That is the relationship between our export and import. Of course, as income rise due to economic growth, that is an increase in the GDP of, that is the GDP, I mean gross domestic product, and low unemployment, people will import more foreign products and consume less domestic product. And we also have the conflict between economic growth and what? Full employment. When economic growth is continuous, firm may also start investing in more capital, which will make them what? Which will make a lot of people to be unemployed. That is, they will not employ more labor when there are more capital. That's it, when there are a lot of machineries to use in production. Now we move to the next slide. To the next slide, we also have first question here. Why might the macroeconomic aim of full employment conflict with the aim of stable price? Of course, we just discussed this. Let us check the options. Full employment leads to higher cost of import. Is that so? Full employment leads to increases in wages. Full employment leads to an increase in income inequality, or it leads to lower export. Of course, full employment leads to increase in consumers' wages. Now we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we also have first question. Which government action will not add directly to the quantity or quality of human resources? We have investment in education and training. Is that so? Of course, that we add to the quantity or quality of human resources. We have reclamation of land from the sea, provision of better food and nutrition, improvement in health facility. Of course, the one that may not add directly to the quantity of quality of human resources is the reclamation of land from the sea. Now we move to the next slide. We also have first question, what is not included in public expenditure? We have interest payment of government borrowing, capital spending by firms, investment in defense by the central government, subsidies to bus company from local government. Of course, public expenditure is related to the government only. Now, the one that is not included in public expenditure is known as capital spending by firm. Now, this will be the end of the class. Stay tuned to our website www.edubbey.com. See you soon.